So I went into this one expecting a game that would have a terrible story, but would have just silly, super awesome, fun gameplay going through it. And then grab, and then throw the lightsaber, and then fling them off the window, and throw stuff at people, and all kinds of fun stuff. And what I got was worse than that. I always like to start with those kind of bombshells. So, if any of you like this game, that's actually fine. I mean, I liked Mario Sunshine, right? But one of the things, this actually came up in the Mario Sunshine thing, and I swear it's related. How many of you can name a particular game, this also applies to movies, but how many of you can name a game where you enjoy it, but you only enjoy this part and this part and this part? So, especially given the option, those are the parts you replay. Or you don't replay the whole game, or you only play it in a certain way, right? I'm the same way. I used to do that quite frequently. I could argue I still do that, but the point is, for the purposes of a review, for the purposes of actually sitting down and analyzing the game, we have to acknowledge the other parts. Star Wars The Force Unleashed is, I keep wanting to say Force Awakens. The Force Unleashed is a game that has a good, solid structure underneath it. The core combat is, let's be clear, fun. And the power fantasy is fun. It's fun to just go through and do all of the awesome stuff I just said. To be able to have all of that kit and all of those different moves, which you can level up to be even more awesome as you're going through it. The game is quite fluid and quite smooth and quite janky, and wait, that doesn't sound like that fits, but it totally does. The jank of the physics engine actually tends to work in favor of the game. This is something I've talked about before. Some people have, and I know I've said this so many times, and I'm going to keep saying it until people understand it. Jank is not bad. Jank is jank. It has nothing to do with good or bad. Jank can be good or bad, depending on the individual application thereof. So in this case, the jank is good, because it's just you just ragdoll people, and you fling things into other things, and you throw the explosives at them, and you throw the rockets back at them, and all that sort of fun stuff, right? The physics in this game are super janky. Camera's not so good. The camera doesn't know what to do in several sections, and the lighting, oh my god, the lighting is terrible. We had to consistently and persistently adjust the gamma based on the planet we're in just to make the game visible. Some of you may know I have this concept called visual distinction, which is something that's important. It's how well you can see what you have to do, and what you can navigate, what you can interact with, and kind of part of the at-a-glance thing, which I talk about quite a bit when it comes to game design. In this case, we have kind of the opposite of that. It's so blurry and so dark and so murky and so gray and so brown and so awful that in many cases I literally can't tell what I'm looking at. I'm just kind of blindly going based on the mini-map as opposed to actually telling where I can go. Now, I should probably mention we were specifically playing the Wii version. This was the specific version that was requested, and by God, it was kind of a pain. It took me about an hour of work because we had a technical glitch at the last minute to make sure to get this thing working. But we did get it working. We got it working. And yeah, it is. This is the specific version we played, which is fairly substantially different from the handheld version on the PSP, which is also different from the PC/Xbox 360/PS3 version. Just wanted to make sure that's clear, because it's going to kind of color and change things with such substantial variations between the versions. I also find it amusing. This game was added to the list, that is to say the list of things to be funded, before we finished doing the review of Jedi Fallen Order. And I only mention that because, looking back, I cannot help but look at Jedi Fallen Order and see the bones of this game in that one. Now, I think Jedi Fallen Order did everything better, just across the board, than this game. But you could still see how there's the structure of it there, and there's the concepts there. But I was talking about how the game is fun. And it is, for a bit. I kind of mentally think of this as the Reese's problem. How many of you like Reese's Pieces? Or just Reese's Peanut Butter Cups? Because I do. I love them. I literally have some in my kitchen right now. Yay. I'm not going to have them right now. I have a sore throat. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. So, this is why I'm here streaming instead of hanging out with family, is because I'm sick. It's okay. I'll be doing a thing Saturday, so I'm not trying to get pity or anything. It's just funny. But the point is, Reese's are awesome, right? Well, imagine if that was your breakfast, and your lunch, and your dinner, and then the next day, and then the next day. The repetition And the specificity of it can make something that is good turn into a bad. I actually had this exact same problem with another game, which I mentioned on stream as well. The Last of Us 2. The Last of Us 2 had wonderful, brilliant, incredible encounter design once. There was one encounter that game had. And it was great, and it was fun, and it was amazing. And then the next encounter was the same. I mean, it was a different area, but it was the same set pieces, the same type of AI, the same overall pattern and loop. It was the same encounter, just in a different area. Now, that's fine, but then they kept doing it, and again, and again, and again, and it started dragging on what was otherwise an excellent gameplay loop. Same problem here. I was having so much fun in the earlier stages, but by the time I got to, honestly, right about after I defeated Shock T, I can pretty much point to that exact moment, that's pretty much the exact moment where I pretty much said pretty much too many times. Oh, and in which the gameplay started getting boring. It started dragging. And I found myself starting to ignore enemies and just kind of walk by them when you can, because you can for the most part. Because it was just the same thing. How many enemies are in this game? Not counting mini-bosses and bosses. We'll come to that in a second. Well, there's person with gun, there's person with melee weapon, and there's person with jetpack. That's kind of it. Everything else is just a reskin of those three archetypes, and that's the enemy encounters. That's fun for a bit, like I said, but there's just so many encounters, and it takes so long to go. This isn't even a long game. But again, by about the halfway point, I was already bored of it. It wasn't helped by the mini-bosses. How many mini-bosses are in this game? Well, there's 3. There's the trash robots on that one planet. Those are kind of cool. Then there's the ATSTs, of which there are plenty. And then there's the Rancors, of which there are plenty. And they're the same fight each time. And frankly, they're not particularly engaging or fun either. So that wasn't great. But surely the bosses salvage it, right? Except no. The bosses are a magnification of problems that the rest of the game has. The first problem, now again, this is specifically the Wii version, but the first problem is the bosses have the ability to just kind of be invincible. Now, usually we call these paling mechanics, named after Final Fantasy XII. This is a little different than that. This is effectively a form of iframes. This is a problem several Mega Man games have had, too, if you were paying attention when we were covering that. The bosses can just decide, no, I'm just going to not take damage for this period of time. Sometimes it's because they're blocking. Sometimes it's because they're down on the ground. Sometimes it's because they're doing an animation or an attack. Sometimes it's because they're walking around. The game could just decide that the bosses don't take damage for a period of time. And so what I would do is I would kind of lightning spatter a little bit to see if they were in a state at which they could take damage before I would actually start to try and expend resources on attacking them, because otherwise I would just be like, nothing, right? There's also the fact that during the boss fights, well, there's no nice way to say this, but I was playing the Wii version. And I don't know if you can actually see this here, but the problem with the Wii version, I'll go ahead and unplug this to really showcase this. So, the problem with the Wii version is this is how you attack. This sucks in every way, shape, and form. And I'm going to actually break down why, because you need to understand how much this sucks. Now, to be clear, most of the rest of it's fine. This is the jump button. This is the block button over here on the nunchuck, which is what we were playing with. That's lightning, which I used a lot of because it's just a button press. That's force push. There's our movement. There's our camera. All of this is fine. There's also very small amounts of actual motion control in the game, mostly with the QuickTime events, which aren't bad. It's very simple. You tilt. If you're doing a melee QuickTime event, you tilt this thing until you get it, and then you push. If you're doing a force lightning QuickTime event, you tilt this thing until you push. Really simple stuff, right? Here's the thing. The waggle is the problem. This is a waggle. Now, for those of you not aware of this, and I admit, I'm not trying to talk down to anyone. I wasn't aware of this until I started looking into emulation of the Wii, for the sake of lore runs and getting this stuff streamable. The way the waggle works is it is a binary input. It is a digital input. That means there's only 2 states at which it can be, on or off. Hence the term, right? Now, to clarify, analog is something that has a gradient. It can have multiple states of existence. So to put it simply, this is binary, or this is digital, right? It's either up or it's down. An analog input would be something that could have, like, at this angle, or at this angle, or at this angle, or at this angle, right? It's anything in between, with degrees of variability, obviously, depending on the specifics. But that's the basic distinction, okay? The waggle is a binary input. It is on or it is off. Now, the reason that's so important is what that means is that the waggle is unnecessary at a base mechanical level. It is the exact same input as pressing a button. Nothing more and nothing less. Now, that's not necessarily a problem by itself. And I've seen that plenty of games have done plenty of things to try and use the waggle controls to some extent or another. The problem comes when you're trying to use it either regularly, which this game does, or precisely, which this game does. So every swing of the lightsaber, every single one, is a waggle. I remind you, a waggle is a binary input. Doesn't matter what you do. It's a swing. Swing, 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 right? Now, I suspect there's differences in the types of swings. I'm not even sure of that. I wasn't able to confirm that because sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. I think it might just be random or based on my own input from the other things. This makes a lot of sense, though. They probably did this specifically so they could just port this over to the PS2 or vice versa without any issues, right? Just input and you're done, right? But anyways, I'm getting off topic. Point being, this is done for the lightsaber swings, which means every single time you do it, you're doing this. This doesn't feel great. Now, I don't actually have carpal tunnel, thank God. But my wrists were starting to hurt by the time I was finishing this game, and I just stopped doing lightsaber attacks. Just in general. I could lightning anything down anyways, which is nice, and in the interest of fairness, I only gave the game one negative for this problem. But the fact is, the game actively discouraged me from that because it's not just the lightsabers. Almost all the combos, all of the force moves, that huge kit I just gave praise for, are also waggle. So to do, like, for example, the lightning shove thing, which is 1, 1, 2, 3, and then or maybe how to do up and then hold B and then go down. There are several different things, and almost all of them is a waggle input. So I wasn't using about, say, 80% of my kit because, hang on, there's one other reason why this is even worse. All of this stuff is at least not great, but not terrible. What really drags this down is the imprecision of it. When in that movement I just did, does the button press happen? Anybody who's played any game on hard mode, or had any game that's difficult, or done any speedruns of any game, or any challenge runs of a game, or anything knows that the exact moment of button press is important. There's a precision to that. There's timing to it. You want to be able to dodge, or avoid, or parry, or attack when the enemy is weak. So you need to know the exact moment when that button press happens. That's also one of the reasons why buttons in general have that tactile pushback. So you have, I don't even have to look, I can tell exactly when that's hitting. This has been true all the way back to the NES, and arguably before that, but my personal first experience with this kind of tactile feedback was with the NES. And the NES, and all the way up to the Switch, do that. All the way up to the PS5 and everything, right? When in this does that swing happen? The best part is, thanks to how imprecise this is, it's actually kind of random. Random's not the right word, but it's inconsistent. Sometimes it'll do it while you're reaching back. Like sometimes I'll do this. Like you see how I'm reaching back to do the shake? Sometimes it'll do it while I'm reaching back when I'm not expecting it to. Sometimes I won't do it until I finish the shake. Sometimes I'll do it mid-shake. So there's this wonderful built-in automatic delay in both directions for all of those actions. And that sucks. And that is the problem with the waggle in one quick thing. I hope you enjoyed my TED Talk. Now we'll talk about Force Unleashed. Although honestly, I don't have much else to share. Most of the boss fights require those kind of inputs, or just leaning on lightning excessively. So that's fun. I ended up leaning on lightning excessively. It's nice to hear the Star Wars music, right? Right. Is that all I've got for the gameplay? I mean, I figured the gameplay would be better than it is, and it kind of wasn't. Let me explain why in one brief sentence, then I'll move on to the story. Because the problem here is that this game could either be a nice, challenging, fun, engaging, difficult romp, Jedi Fallen Order, or it could be an absolute curb stomp Dynasty Warriors style thing where you're just smashing through everything effortlessly as a power fantasy enjoyment trip, which is actually also Jedi Fallen Order if you crank the difficulty down. Right? It fails at both. The game initially starts off with the and you're just having fun with it. But the game scales up the health of the enemies as you're going and gives even normal enemies those invulnerability options I mentioned. Now, in the case of the Stormtroopers specifically, I can tell you, it's just that they block. And while they're blocking, they take no damage from anything whatsoever, which is stupid, but let's ignore that for a moment. are just completely invincible. So they can just be invincible, and they have tons and tons of health. I showed this off on camera twice. The jetpack enemies are the worst by far, because all the jetpack enemies have tons and tons and tons of health. And I was just juggling this guy over and over for, I want to say, about 15 seconds before he finally fell over. He didn't move once, and I was just... and then the lightsaber in the chest, and then smishing him down, fling him against the wall, and then lightning him some more, and then slice him again, and then he finally died. The game gets padding-y with its combat towards the later part of the game. And it gets to the point where you're not buzz-killing through these things. Buzz-Killington. Well, you're not buzz-sawing through them, killing all your enemies, and so it just kind of slows down the power fantasy. But again, it's not challenging. If you were paying attention, I just mentioned how I was completely juggling this guy without effort. He couldn't do anything. So there's no challenge, and there's no fun. And I feel like that describes the story pretty accurately, too. If we're to take the story seriously, it's terrible. If we're to take the story humorously, it's fun to make fun of, MST3K style, and that's not really a good indicative, is it? In the interest of fairness, this is what I like to call starting downhill. You know, you've got a hill to climb before you can get back up to average, and then you have to do even more work to get up to actually being a good work. So this story started downhill, okay? You want to retcon the creation of the rebellion, again, okay? And you want to insert another super mega powerful Jedi that nobody's ever heard of in this thing. Okay. And you want him to be so mega powerful that he's actually capable of fighting Palpatine and winning. Okay. Immediately after defeating Darth Vader, by the way. Right. And he can bring down a Star Destroyer by himself. Okay. You're starting downhill, but you can make that work. Both seriously and in a silly sense. And the silly sense is obvious. Just embrace the cheese. You know, just go full Fast and the Furious or full Expendables or whatever you want to call it and just be like, and have fun with it, right? They didn't do that. Instead, they tried to make this a serious story, which is questionable with something like this. So that didn't work in its favor either. The other problem is, how many of you have ever applied to act somewhere? Play, theater, musical, television, movie, whatever. One of the things that happens, for those of you not aware, when you do that, is they give you a little sheet. And there's a list of characters and a very brief description, usually like one sentence. This is them. They are a former Imperial pilot. They are a former Jedi Master. They are the secret apprentice of Darth Vader. That's the character in this game. Nobody has any actual development or characterization. They start one note and they remain that way the entire time. So that doesn't help anything. So you've decided to make it so that Darth Vader is the founder of the rebellion, with Palpatine's blessing, obviously. I could see that. I don't like it because I kind of feel like people would rebel against you without your input. I think you've been doing plenty on that front. And I kind of liked both the original EU concept of the forces just kind of slowly drifting together and obviously Idris Elba, wow. Bel Iblis, getting my name screwed up here, eventually pushing them together and starting the Treaty of Corellia and all that. That's cool. I actually kind of like the AU's take on this as well. The one, just dozens, if not hundreds of little rebel groups are all rebelling in small, dinky, insignificant ways. And one rebel group just kind of started getting more and more momentum, more and more snowball, which kind of gathered some of the other rebel groups into it until bit by bit, all of these different tiny little pieces of completely disorganized mess turned into one unified rebel alliance. Both of these appeal to me. I could see Palpatine and Vader starting the snowball. But that's not what we see. Instead, he's like, I will kill you. Okay, go start the rebellion. Just so I can bring in the leaders of the rebellion. Also, here's the leaders. And you are the leader. You are the leader of the rebellion. You started the rebellion. The whole hopes of the entire galaxy rest entirely on your shoulders. And you have done... This is the exact same problem I had with Star Trek Enterprise in Season 1 and Season 2. We are told how important we are. At no point are we really shown that. But everyone acts like we are the freaking savior. I don't think anyone even treated Luke that much. As like, oh God, Luke. Instead, that's what everyone treats us like throughout the entire work. And I just feel awkward and uncomfortable the entire time. So, there's no characters, and the plot is silly at best. And, oh right, and then there's the romance thing. There's a common misconception that I am anti-romance, and that is stupid and wrong. And the actual truth is I am anti-bad writing. It just, I happen to bring it up when it usually involves romantic matters, because of course I do. It's one of the things that Hollywood in general, both in television, movies, and games, tend to do the worst, the most. One of the things that irritates me the most is when there's two people who happen to be on screen, and of course they're male and female for some reason, and they happen to be near each other, and therefore they fall in love. No work put into it. No chemistry between the actors or actresses or anything. No investment, no development, no nothing. They don't even have a fling. We are told that they are together because they love each other, because we are told that. No actual work put in on behalf of the writers. You see why I'm pointing out this is actually a writer issue more than anything else. It is, in fact, lazy. They're together because, probably because there's a checklist somewhere, and they have to put romance on that checklist. Enter Juno and Galen Merrick, or Galen Merrick, I forgot how they pronounce it. They don't actually say it in this game. Star Killer. Why are they together? Why are they romantically interested in each other? Because. Checklist. That's it. And that is all I have to say about that, really. But the problem is, the game, if it just did that, that would just be irritating and then whatever, I'd move on. Instead, the game really shoves it down my throat. The game goes out of its way to not only have the big kissing scene, but far more importantly, towards the end of the game, there's this bit where he mentions, when he came to that bar, there was this one bright spot in his heart, the one thing that kept him true and pure and good, and it was you! If you're going to try and cut ahead like that, you need to do some establishment first. And I'm just going to summarize, because that's what this game does. The biggest problem with this game, by a huge margin, is something I have coached and taught people for decades at this point with regards to creative writing. One of the trends, we all do this, I do this, we all have this problem. One of the trends in writers, especially when they first get into writing, is they think, okay, I want to tell this story about, let me just make up something. There's this dude and this dudette, and the two are duding it up. But then they're going to discover this horrible secret, and this is going to change their lives forever, and it's going to completely throw everything up down, right? Okay, so big moment. It doesn't even matter what the specifics is. That's like the crux of the story, and then you want to tell the story about the follow-through. So what new writers and inexperienced and bad writers will do is they'll say, okay, here's dude and dudette, but then this thing happens and throws their life into complete shambles. They didn't earn it. I call it hurrying to get to the good stuff, because that's what we think of it as, right? We want to get to the good part, the part we really want to write, the part of the story we're writing the story for, right? We want to get to that moment, but we have to establish it. We have to. One of those times, this is not a joke, one time I was actually reading a story someone had written, and she had that kind of a thing, the big moment, and literally, this is a physical piece of paper, literally on the first page was when they got to that moment. Like, it was about maybe 2/3 down the page. I was like, okay, and there's this person, and they live here, and they do this. This person over here, and they're this. And then, big dramatic moment, and I'm like, whoa. What? We all want to do that, because we all want to get to the good stuff. It makes sense, but it doesn't make it good. In fact, it makes it bad. It actually detracts from a work. Now, in the interest of fairness, yes, it is possible to do a story where you start with the big event and then you make it work afterwards. But that is much harder to do and takes much more careful craft and work. Now, what does this have to do with Star Wars Force Unleashed? Every scene in the entire game feels like that. It feels like they're just, come on, let's go. And, okay, we're the Messiah, and, okay, and we're dead. We died. We're cool. It's just rushing to get to the good stuff, and it doesn't do anything to establish anything, not with the Juno romance, not with us founding the rebellion, not with why people actually trust us, not with we don't even have the proxy thing in this particular version of the game. We don't have anything to go on. We have no relationship with Darth Vader. They want to make that a big conflicting scene. It wants to be a big thing. He's essentially the final boss. But there's no relationship there other than the fact that he betrayed us twice. And that's it. That's all we've got going for us. Okay. That's it? Yeah. The game does nothing to earn it. And so the story falls flat completely. Now, I'm saying this way because, and this is my final thoughts, when I first became aware of this game, and I played a little bit, I was like, oh, this is fun. Then I had to put it down because back then, me and my various group of friends, we all had one Wii between us because remember how hard it was to get a Wii back in the day. And so I only played a little bit of it and never actually got back to it because I was like, oh, I wonder where that story went. And I don't feel like waiting. So I'm going to go ahead and read up on it. Oh. And I hated it. But the reason I hated it was because of that knee-jerk emotional reaction. This is why I kind of prefaced that thing with they start downhill. The immediate reaction of the intended audience, in this case, myself, and I know several other people had this reaction. I'm sure not everyone did, but I'm curious how many of you had this initial reaction. Oh, you're going to retcon the creation of the Rebel Alliance to this random dude. Sure. How many of you had that same kind of knee-jerk emotional starting downhill reaction to that? Because I sure did. And again, I know I'm not alone on that. But even with pushing that away and going through with analysis mode and using the intellectual side of things instead of the emotional side of things, they didn't do it right. That could have worked. It didn't. So it actually slides further downhill, and I hate this story. I'm told the other versions are substantially different. I'm not sure how they would review differently. I really don't know. I don't think I could get the PC version streamable, so that's not happening. I guess that's all I got. I do hope you all are doing well today and having something to be thankful for other than this terrible, stupid video by me. And I do look forward to your thoughts and comments as always. See you next time.